Okay, so we'll just get into it then. So your name is Raleigh. You're with Thoughtful Millennials, right? Is
You are
that
correct.
yeah? So
Yeah,
you're a millennial yourself, is that right?
definitely a millennial. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting discussion about what that means, but to us, it's just an age range. So
Okay. So what
yeah,
I've heard like differentiating even in the age ranges. Like, what would you say the age range is?
that's a great question. Like for example, my boss considers herself a millennial, but she's like 38, so I think she's pushing it.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's anyone who like kind of maybe connects with the idea of, being more understanding of like beyond just focusing on yourself, for example. So like when you're approaching any problems or if you see anything in society you don't like, then maybe figuring out ways to like resolve that issue or whatever it might be. So like millennial is like a generation, but like just because let's say you're 38, like my boss, doesn't mean I would say she's not a millennial, right? She might think like one or whatever it might be. And so yeah, to us, like if I had to put an age range on it, it's like 20 to 35 or whatever it might be. But again, I think it's typically people who just, are looking to make an impact on the world, in a positive manner, and also, approach problems and I guess solve them. But I guess that's kind of also everyone. So
Sure.
maybe everyone's a millennial.
Yeah, at heart, right?
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
so tell us like your background. What got you to where you are now with the blog? I mean, it's kind of new, right?
It's very new, yeah. So we've only been doing this for about a month, to be honest. And it's a group of friends, more or less, and we're all about the same age. Some a little bit older, some a little bit younger. But we all have typical 9 to 5 jobs. Like I work in software. One person works as like certifying products as organic or not.
Oh, wow.
So very wide range of what we do. But as a typical 9 to 5 job, sometimes you don't feel like you're, maybe having as big of an impact or anything like that,
Sure.
on society that you would want. And also, it's a good opportunity for us, we thought, to maybe share our thoughts, because we always have like good discussions amongst our friends or with our significant others.
So, so I mean, I guess that kind of like answers the next question. Some is so what you're wanting to accomplish with the group then is just to create more dialogue, get people kind of thinking more.
Yeah, just have good discussions, and make people really sit down and think, because like I think a lot of news sources and media, like depending upon like what you tune into, you hear more or less what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And so like that's why we discuss such a wide range of topics, and it's not necessarily like focusing on any current events. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, but more so just to hopefully have people take a step back and look at things from a different perspective, or at least have a good discussion that day.
Sure.
So yeah, you kind of hit it right on the head with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess that's the next thing is like, what would you say, like, as far as making it successful? Like, what would be your definition of it being successful? Like, is it something where you want to like quit your jobs and this would be what you do full time, or like, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. The major goal I would say is like to be able to post articles that actually have a change. So like we recently wrote that article, which I think we connected with you about, in regards to recycling and how, the infrastructure in the US doesn't really support a quality recycling program.
Yeah.
And, if, for example, someone was like, they read that article and they're like, man, that is ridiculous. And they decided to create like a recycling program in their town that was like sustainable and efficient. And then like reached out to us and they're like, thank you so much for your article, because we had no idea of this information and like where our recycling is actually going. We started this grassroots program to like have this positive effect. I think that would be the ultimate goal, is like truly making a change or a difference.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, even with the article, for example, if we're discussing something as ridiculous as like men's hygiene, like if someone was like, hey man, now I brush my teeth twice a day, you know what I mean? Like even that, you're like, all right, like that's good,
That's a win.
Yeah, that's a win,
Yeah.
So yeah, just to see like those positive effects, maybe, or
Yeah.
like hear about them and share it out.
Do you guys have like a plan going forward? Is it the plan just to keep producing articles, or?
Yeah, honestly, it's just to continue to like put out new content. So like, for example, we have a couple different writers, or at least a couple different people who come up with ideas, and some people like writing more than others. So like, for example, my significant other, she's always extremely thoughtful. but she doesn't like writing very much. So sometimes I'll take like some of her thoughts. I'm like, that's an interesting thought, and I'll write it. Or some other people, it's a similar situation on our team. They might hear an interesting idea or concept and write about it. And that's honestly more or less what we're doing. We have like a couple ideas, written down that we plan to discuss like in the future. But then really we're just spur of the moment writing that article kind of that week for that week. And that's the thing, like I said, we made it just as like a creative outlet. So we're kind of just keeping it that way. And like the growth of it is, a pro. And, dealing with any positive or sometimes even, negative feedback is also a pro, because you still get to hear people's thoughts of like, like we wrote an article on, for example, why we've seen an increase in the trend of like millennials owning pets versus like previous generations. And someone was just ripping us apart saying that, people have owned pets forever. And we're like, well, yeah, like that's not the point of the article. Like the trend is going up, and like here's our thoughts as to why. So even like hearing that kind of feedback is interesting, because that's another form of discussion.
That's that's funny, because I was looking at that one too, and I was like, like I have a friend that's a vet, and I was like, do people really own more pets, or am I just like noticing pets more? Like he was like, no, people actually own more pets. It's like pet ownership is going up, which
and it's crazy. And I'm sure there's a lot of like reasons or like thoughts as to why that is, but like we noticed that too, because we were again like just chatting, and I think all of us have a pet, and we're like, okay, like I don't think that was a thing maybe 30 years ago, what I mean? So then we're like looked into it, and we're like, like it's going up, so.
That's an interesting one. What other like big conflicts have you had so far? I mean, I know you're just kind of new into it, but
super technical, and in terms of like writing code and things like that, and I know enough to get me in trouble, but I don't know enough to do anything. And so we use a WordPress site, for example, and I was trying to mess with the code, which I probably shouldn't have been, which no one ever should, to be honest.
Right.
And I blew up our website for like a day and a half.
Oh, no. What's been the biggest win so far?
Honestly, we've heard some people who are starting to like change the way they, go about their daily lives, for example, after some of our articles, or just the overall like positive feedback. So like, I don't think we've had any like major huge wins, but like, I think all the little ones like are adding up to like say, all right, like, our articles are actually making a difference, or like at least promoting some insightful discussion. And like, for example, like seeing all the comments on our recycling article was super cool to see. Like people felt intrigued and felt like, wow, I had no idea that this was going on. I try to post weekly just to keep people engaged and informed and ensure they have like one hopefully insightful discussion or conversation a week. And so, that's our general goal.
So is it a millennial thing to like Instagram over Facebook?
That's a good question.
That's a good article for you right there.
That is a good article.
Which one's the best?
I'll give you a shout out for that if we ever write it. No, honestly, like I haven't used Facebook that often.
If you wanted to put a message out here on video to everybody, like what would you want to say?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I honestly like, just to kind of go along with what we've been talking about, like I think if everyone could like do their best maybe to like look into something they're, not super sure about, or even stuff that they are sure about, like, I'm positive the sky is blue, but like, it's also good to still ask those questions of like, why is it blue? What causes us to believe that, and things like that. And I'm not like a crazy skeptic. I'm not like skeptical of everything, but I think it's good to like every now and then ask those questions and have those discussions. So I think my message to everyone would be, maybe break out of your shell a little bit and your typical way of thinking. And also like try to learn a little bit more every day, because I think truly if we all do our part to learn a little bit, or be more knowledgeable about things that we weren't yesterday, it does add up to making a positive change, even though it is just information,
Sure.
Being able to make better decisions on like how you spend your money or how you treat others, or your impacts on the society or on society and the environment, I think do add up. So break out of your shell, pick up a book, read an article that's informative, not just like fantasy football stats. And you know, that would be my message.